What's going on, everybody? This is your man, Big Stu, Scott Stewart, or Professor Stewart, depending on how you know me. And we are back for yet another edition, probably the hottest edition out of the oven on Dope People. Today, we have Dr. Jeremy Owoh, Dr. J, all the way from the AK, Arkansas. Dr. J in the building. Thank you, Dr. J, for being here. Dr. J. So look, this is what I have. Yeah, man. Look, this is what I have about you. It's not a lot, but sometimes less is more. I know you're an alpha man. I know you're an alpha. I'm not Greek, but there are a lot of alpha men in my family. I get a lot of stuff for not pledging, but it's okay. And I also know that you're in the Jacksonville-North Pulaski School District, which is in Arkansas, and you are the soup. You are the superintendent.
Yes, sir.
I understand that you care deeply about you having a deep leadership philosophy that's based around authentic educational equity through the practice of deep listening and honest conversations. Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. That's enough to go off on. But before we get into more about you and why we're here, on every episode with every guest, we like to play a little game of this or that. Do you mind jumping in a game of this or that with us today?
I'm ready, Professor.
Awesome. I'm stoked about this. We got Dr. J, Dr. Jeremy Owoh here. Let's get into this edition of this or that. So, white meat or dark meat?
Dark.
Dark meat. All right. Apple or Android?
Apple.
Pancakes or waffles?
Waffles.
He's like, these are no-brainers.
Yeah,
Day or night?
Oh, night.
Love or money?
Love.
Book or movie?
Book all day.
All right. Now we're coming to the end of this. In-person learning or e-learning?
In person.
Teachers or principals?
Teachers.
Oh, you good, man. You are just like bringing it.
You must have read my philosophy as Ed. I mean, you're spot on.
PWI or HBCU?
Yeah. Wow. HBCU. But we need to explore that conversation.
Let's do it right now. Let's go right now. Wow. Well, you really pondered that one. Let's go right now.
Because I'm a product of a PWI. And so I know the type of education that I received, but then I also know the history and the relevance of an HBCU, of HBCUs. And I teach adjunct at an HBCU. So I think both have an impact and can have an impact. They have both value, and one is not better than the other because of the experience that all of our students can get, all of our people can gain from them. But there's a historical and a traditional concept behind an HBCU that you can never find at a PWI. But I also know that as an educator, I received a very high quality educational experience that prepared me to be who I am and the type of leader I am right now. So that's why I ponder, because I definitely see the value, the intrinsic value of both. And but we cannot lose the historical context of why we have HBCUs. So there's power in that regard too that we definitely don't want to lose sight of.
I would agree. I attended Southern University, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But I have a great deal of respect for my Ivy Leagues and my Stanfords and of the world, my University of Chicago's of the world. I have a daughter that just graduated from the University of Illinois at
Okay.
Champaign. So I get it, I get it. But I'm with you. There's something about that HBCU experience. They both are valuable. But as a black man, for me specifically, as a black man, I would not trade my HBCU experience for anything. For
And I tell you, Professor Stewart, even though I'm not a product of an HBCU, because my teachers growing up, my principals who look like me, were all products of an HBCU. I can never discount the quality of education that a HBCU, but not just quality of it, the educational experience, but lifelong lessons of an HBCU. Um, and every time I go to an HBCU, even though I'm not a student of that HBCU, I feel like I'm going home.
yeah.
So,
I hear people say that all the time. Walking on the yard always feels like a homecoming. Like
mhm.
every day feels like you're coming home, like you are at home. Listen, there were a couple of reasons why I was super excited that you agreed to be on Dope People. I recognize Dope People from miles away, and obviously in this digital space, I can kind of glean from your online presence and your online activity. That's all I got, right? Who's dope and who's kind of faking the funk. And I was like, man, this guy's look like he's dope, and I gotta have him on. But
Appreciate
let me be honest. Let us be honest on record right now. We don't know each other. Is that correct?
that's correct.
We
First
don't.
time
We've
meeting.
never met. But I feel like you're one of my guys. There was something that I learned about you that when I learned this, I was like, oh, I gotta have him on. It's kind of how we got into education. So I never in a million years, when I was in middle school and high school, Dr. J, the only thing I wanted to do was to get out. When I got to school, I couldn't wait to go home. I just wanted to get out of the building. High school was a little bit different because I was definitely one of the most popular people in the building. People know me that I don't know. And so that the social aspect helped in high school. But again, there was nothing educational that was attracting me to to the building, but it had nothing to do with my lack of intelligence. Highly intelligent, well written, well spoken, well read. Just didn't want to be in school. I wanted to do my own thing. And you had a unique perspective or interaction with school. Can you talk to us about what was your early, first of all, and we're going to get into it. Where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from?
Originally from a small country town called Camden, Arkansas, 2 hours south of the capital city here in Arkansas. Uh, and it was probably a town of a population about 16,000. And but I thought it was a pretty large town until I grew up and grew out, and so and explored life outside the state of Arkansas. But yeah,
16,000 people in my zip code, man,
right, right,
But
right.
okay, so now tell us about what was elementary in school? What kind of student were you?
I I struggled as a student, and not just academically, but more so socially. I definitely have a unique last name, and proud of my last name. Owoh is my dad is from Enugu State, Nigeria, and he came to Arkansas as an international student. He was attending college, and that's how my mom and my dad met, and they had three children. I have an older brother, Richard, and a twin brother, Jeremiah. And so my dad has this thick accent. I mean, because he's from Nigeria, he's from Africa. And so growing up, and even before we learned to speak, we were continue to hear him, and we all struggled with speech, and I had to go through speech therapy, and just the negative connotation of having to get that support in school, kindergarten and first grade. And I used to tell people it was second grade because it was a mental note. I thought it was second grade, but my mom most recently reminded me. She was saying, Jeremy, you telling story all wrong. And it was first grade. And so my first grade year, I just struggled in speech therapy, which also transferred over into my reading classes. And so I struggled with reading. And so much so that at the end of my first grade year, um, the teacher uh, thought and was going to retain me, and she was going to retain me because I was not performing well in reading. And my mom, just felt like, well, the teacher knew best, and things of that nature. But the principal was like, no, we cannot do that to him. He's a twin. There's going to be much more of a detriment for him to be retained and his twin to go forward. And the teacher agreed. And then so what they decided, the principal, the teacher, and my mom, that they were going to work. The teacher was going to work with my mom and giving her additional resources for me to work on at home. The teacher, I stayed after school. Teacher worked with me after school during the summer. My mom worked with me, and in order for me to matriculate to the second grade. And um, that's what happened. And so I was able to move on to the second grade with my twin brother. But in the course of that, that additional reading support, and this is why I will always choose a teacher above any other profession, and why I always want to remember how it is to be a teacher, not just as a former profession of mine, but also my experience with my teachers, because of my teacher personal impact on my life. By the time I was in third grade, I actually became a gifted and talented student. I started to excel. I had a passion for reading, loved reading. My reading
Wow.
scores now. Now this is why I always get goosebumps, because I know teachers have lifelong impacts, and I know it because of my personal experience. Because of that additional support that I obtained from my teacher, I excelled in reading, started to excel in the other classes, became a gifted and talented student, but then grew from that grew a love and a passion for reading, and I started to increase my reading levels. I started to increase by grade levels, and by the time I was in middle school, I was reading 2 or 3 grade levels above. I mean, I was reading chapter books and beyond. And I tell you, a guilty pleasure back then was Stephen King books. I still
Okay.
love Stephen King
Okay.
books. But and then I had my seventh grade teacher, English teacher, really developed a strong passion in me for grammar, because she connected the importance of grammar, sentence structure, the way we enunciate, pronunciate, all of that, and why it connected with reading and how it all came together for literacy. And I loved it. And I probably sound like a nerd saying how much I love grammar, but I understood the importance of it. And then I had AP teachers, now first grade almost being retained because of reading. And then my end of my high school career taking advanced placement courses and loving excelling. And I had phenomenal teachers. And I tell you, Professor Stu, never did I think that teaching would be um, in my pathway. But I went to college. So my dad thought that business would be the best major for both my brother and I. So I was a marketing major, and my twin brother was an accounting major. Hated it, hated it. I hated it, but I took the courses all the way up to the end of my junior year, first my senior year, and I said I can't do this, and I decided to take some English courses and never turned back from that. Took some English courses, some education courses, declared my major as an English education major, and the rest is history. Love teaching English, love, and I'm really passionate about making sure all of my scholars understand why strong literacy skills is going to pay off, and that's why I tell my story and to everyone who listens, because if it wasn't for those teachers, if it wasn't for them growing the passion of literacy in me, I wouldn't be right here right now.
Oh, wow, that is absolutely phenomenal, inspiring. And I know there's some young people who um, have probably been in similar situations as yours and just didn't get that break.
Hmm.
You say it was teachers, but you also, and this is, I'm just asking for clarity. I want you to kind of clear this up. But it was the principal who was like, nah, 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 nah. The principal saw something of a greater impact because do you imagine, do you ever even think, and I know it's hypothetical, but do you ever wonder how your life may have turned out if you were retained
I do,
versus,
but
and
I
what do
see
you
it,
come up with?
Professor Stu. I see it even when I became a teacher. And that's why, and I didn't share this part, but if you allow me to, when I entered the English education degree program, my prayer, I remember this to this day. Pray, I said, God, place me in a position where I can have the most impact. So I entered the education profession knowing that the greater impact will be me becoming a an administrator, because I could have a larger impact. And that's what I so while I was a teacher, I would see so many of our young people fall literally face down in the cracks and the gaps and lost. And so I continue to see myself in them, and even with my 13-year-old son. um and why it's important for all of us, even if it's just one of us, to be an advocate for these young people, for our young people, because I don't I mean, I could have been still in my hometown. I see so many of my classmates who are, back in the hometown and really do not have any vision or any motivation to do anything. They just their drive is not there, and I think that's one of the things that two things that really my principal, my teacher, and my mom, even from that point, instilled in me, is the passion and the drive to do well. And it's always because I'm always looking, how can I do how can I make a better impact, or what can I do better? And I'm never settled at a point where I think that my work is done, or I've actually made it to the peak of the mountain. It's always like I'm still on that journey. And so I look back and think that my life could have been in a completely different on a completely different path if, as you stated, which I always highlight the teacher, but never really focus on the impact that the principal did. But you're right, because that principal said, "No, we're not doing this," and that's the and. But I will say, Professor Stu, that's why I became an instructional leader, a leader, because I wanted to be able to say, "No, we're not doing this. This is what we're going to do." For
Mhm,
these young
mhm,
people,
mhm.
and you have to be in leadership. But I tell people every day, we talk about effective teachers. Well, effective teachers need effective leaders, and so we need strong leaders who are willing to make those tough decisions.
Yeah. Wow. Let's dig in some more. What's working for it? This is my criticism. I'm a teacher, right? I never thought in a million years that I would be a teacher. I'm from business. I studied marketing. I have a degree and have a master's in integrated marketing. I'm a business guy first. I spent time in corporate. 9/11 happened. I found myself in a new having to do something different. I as a business owner, I created an after school program teaching business and entrepreneurship to people in the community, black community, south and west sides of Chicago. And so I'm an educator, 18-time award-winning teacher, have taught all over the world, have helped literally thousands of young people, right? Um, so I can be critical of educators because I am one. So I sit at the table and I have the right to be critical of us. And one of the criticisms that I have is that the system hasn't changed much since the 30s, 40s, 50s, since the beginning of time. The system of educational delivery hasn't changed much. My question to you is, what's working in education? And of course, I'm going to follow that up with what needs to be improved. So, what's working in education?
What's working is those educators, those leaders who are willing to push that envelope, to challenge the status quo, and you see it. You see it in pockets. But as you, Professor Stu, you're absolutely spot on. It's not happening. When it takes a pandemic to teach us what we're doing in the classroom and the school buildings are not working, then that should have been a red flag right then. Because when we had to pivot to technology and we tout that we're um, we're technologically driven, we have the latest technology, but no one knew how to use it. No one knew how to use it to teach or to provide instruction. Our students were teaching us how to Zoom, how to do Google Classroom, and and that should have been a reality check for me. When our kids are learning more outside the classroom than they are in the classroom, then that should have been the reality check that we are still doing the same things that that were being done when we were in school. It may have worked back then, but it's not working now. And so when I see the promising aspects of education that I see now are those educators who are, and I'll say those parents who are challenging the status quo, but the educators who are pushing against the status quo and are willing to make those changes and close their door and teach what our kids need to be taught. And it's those soft skills, it's those um, global skills that they need to know. And it's not just about going to college, it's about learning what you're passionate about and excelling in those. And so it may be going to a career, going straight into a job, but how do we provide the opportunities for our kids to be successful in those jobs that are right there ready for them when they leave, when they walk across the 12th grade, uh, walk across the stage their 12th grade year. And I say that meaning that there's so many certifications and skills that we can teach our young people while they're with us, K through 12th grade, that will set them up for success when they leave us. And it's just not about going to a 4-year college. It's that trade school, it's that 2-year technical school, it's those certifications that they gain when they're in our 10th, 11th, 12th grades. Um, and then giving them the opportunity that you can go to college after that. But this is how you can be successful based on your interests, the things that engages you, your passion, and this is how we're going to support you. It's really driving these schools and districts who have made it a concerted effort and listening to the student voices and listening and giving us our students a seat at the table. One of the worst things that I think is happening in the district is that in school districts across the country is that we're making decisions that impact our young people but don't even take the time to have them at the table. So we're making decisions for
Say
them.
that for the people in the back. Say that again for the people in the back.
We're making decisions for our young people and don't even have them at the table, not even taking the time to listening to them. So we don't know what interests them. We don't know what engages them. We don't know what they're passionate about. But we're basing our decisions based on how we learned 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. And that's why we're not being successful in education because we're making decisions based on when we had the one room classroom, school buildings. And our kids don't learn that way anymore.
Yeah, there's so much that I talk about how if I had to do a paper, a research paper, I had to take the bus to the local library, um, and I had to go to microfiche and
Mm.
really look up the history. Where today, and I'm not mad about it. Today, young people can just Google it. I'm here for it because that's right, because we can expedite learning, which means we can learn more faster, which means we
Mhm.
can go longer, right? So I'm not mad that you didn't have to go to the library. I'm super excited that we can go Google and we can verify the source right there on the spot, right? And then move on. Okay, now we got that. What's next? And now we can go just deeper, deeper, deeper and just get it done.
But we're not willing to let our students do that because we're not comfortable with that. The adults are not comfortable with that. And because we're not comfortable with that, we don't allow our students to challenge us
Wow.
and to make us grow. I mean, we talk about, see, and that's the thing, rhetoric versus reality. We
Come on.
talk about things and the way things should be, but we don't walk that same talk. We don't walk the same journey that we talk about, because if we did, we would allow our students to take ownership of their education and allow us to be facilitators. But we continue to do things or speak against things that make us feel uncomfortable. And when our kids know more than we do, that makes the adults feel uncomfortable.
As a classroom teacher, I often asked students to show me how you do it. Show me another way. I
Mhm.
often ask and I'm very clear that there are many teachers in the building that I worked in and taught in that had these control issues. It was more really sit down, shut up. No, that's not the way to do it. We do it this way, my way. I don't care what you learned. I don't care we're going to do it this way. And so that really hindered and my experience with you know being a teacher when I'm a business guy, and so it reminded me a lot of my own experiences in middle school and high school, which kind of started to put this disdain. It was some of my own triggers about education, which is why I was like, look, let me get out of here. I'm taught in Chicago public schools, third largest school district in the nation.
Mhm.
um, and I attended a Chicago public high school. I went to parochial school for elementary, but it was still the same thing. It's not about whether the school is a private school or a public school. For me, it was about the educators and their
Right.
expansiveness, their open-mindedness. So what needs to happen, Dr. O, Dr. J? What needs to happen? I think I heard you say, but what does the classroom of the next 10 years, the working effective classroom for the next 10 years or in the next 10, 20 years look like? What does that look like to you?
What it looks like to me is having our students participating in internships and externships where they're not in the classroom. They're not sitting in straight rows anymore. Everything is hands on, and they're learning and they're developing those skills. And I think some of our school districts are headed in that direction, but there's still some who are teaching instruction via lecture, via straight rows. Um, Cooperative learning, even though it's the teacher talking and not the students talking. But our next wave of education needs to have our students doing more of the hands-on, more of the um, outside of the classroom, in our businesses, in our hospitals. They have to be outside of these classrooms, and it's not just about a book, reading a book. It's going to be those practical experiences, hands-on experiences. Because if we don't do that, then a lot of our communities are going to be farther and farther behind because they are not preparing our young people for the next wave of businesses of life. And I think that we have to get ahead of that curve or that wave before we lose another generation.
Yeah, I agree. What's something that because we need to we're coming to the end here. What's something that we haven't quite talked about that's super important to you that you want your peers to hear? And your peers, we have other school leaders, superintendents, principals, teachers. What's something that keeps you up at night or motivates you in the morning that you really want to make sure people know and hear from and or about you?
So I'm going to um, you gave me the platform and so to say this. So I'm going to be very candid. What keeps me up at night is the criminality of education
Come on,
because
come on.
we pimp our young people for championships, for trophies, for state awards, regional awards, but we do not prepare them. We don't do our part in preparing them for life after 12th grade. When they leave us, and I tell you, I see too many of our um, all state, all region, um, state, I mean, just top notch athletes walking around our cities not having any type of support, not having any type of lifelong goals. They're just lost walking around. But when they were in our schools, we touted their athletic ability, their skills in the band room, their choir skills, and used that to benefit the school system, but not our young people. And I really believe when we don't invest, when we don't take time to ensure that every single scholar has a plan for life after 12th grade, then we should be held accountable. When we talk about there's break-ins, there's violence, there's um, crime in the neighborhoods, it's not because of our young people failed us or failed themselves. It's because the adults failed our young people. And I really believe that's a criminal act because we have not taken the opportunity to, one, create opportunities for our young people, make sure that they know about those opportunities, and then make sure that they're prepared for those opportunities. And that's why I always tout, we hear this educational jargon about um, educational equity. But that was a hot topic. But when you really dive into educational equity, it's ensuring that all of our educators have the resources and tools that they need to be successful in providing an educational experience for each and every scholar, so that each one of our scholars students receive the very best education that they need individually to be successful. That's educational equity. It's putting our funds, our time, our resources, our tools to ensure that every single young person receives exactly what they need to be successful. We shouldn't tout that we have 90% or 95% proficiency or exemplary scores on the test, because then I challenge our leaders, our educators. What about that 5%, those 10% that are not being successful? Are you really comfortable in knowing that you have 5% of 10% of your student body not having a pathway to success when they leave you? And that's why I would really challenge and um, encourage our leaders to really look at, are we really providing the very best educational experience and support and resources to all of our scholars? Or are we just catering to a certain percentage? The and really the percentage who's going to do well without us. And that's really what's been happening. We cater to the and we tout how successful a certain percentage of our student body is performing, but they're going to do well without us. What about that other percentage? And so leaders in my position, we have to get out of this office, out of our offices, and into the classrooms, into the hallways, and make sure that our leaders and our teachers, our support staff who are in the buildings with our young people every day, they have the right resources and the right support that they need to be successful with our young people. And it's not a cookie cutter uh, distribution with all of our schools. Every classroom is different because every child that we encounter is different. So that every building is going to be different. Every sector of the community is different. And so we need to get out of our comfortable chairs and make sure that we shake up the status quo to make sure that each of our students is successful.
Yeah, teaching ain't for the faint of heart, man.
It's not. And
It's
so if
not
you're
for the
not
faint of
strong,
heart.
you need to
Yeah.
get out. But I have one thing that you brought up though, Professor Stu, is our non-traditional. This is really what's the positive about education, is our non-traditional teachers like you. I hired, when I was a high school principal, I had a young man who was in the business sector, and he had been on interview and after interview and after interview and could not get a job. And he, during my interview with him, I said, "Is there anything?" The last question: "Is there anything else you would like to share with?" He said, "I just need an opportunity. I need an opportunity," and that stuck with me. And when I tell you, and that was maybe 15 years ago. To date, he has been my best hire, because when I tell you the relationships and what that man did in that classroom with our young people, now he doesn't look like me and you, but the kids in his classroom look like me and you. And what he did for those kids, you cannot tell me, you cannot sell. And I went through a traditional program, but you cannot tell me that a traditional program is more beneficial than a non-traditional program. It's about the heart of that educator and the passion that educator has to make an impact on those young people. And I tell you, non-traditional, I will hire a non-traditional teacher over a traditional teacher any day now. But I wanted to mention that when you mention yours. So sorry, I'm long-winded.
No, man. This is the platform for you to be long-winded, and I'm gonna let you breathe. I appreciate your your candor. I appreciate your insights. I appreciate your vulnerability and your transparency in sharing your story. It is refreshing to have you on the show today. You really exemplify dope people. You are dope people. I'm glad to have finally met you, and I look forward to doing more with you in the future. Um, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Where can the people find you? Where can they get up with you if somebody wanted to reach out to
I,
you? Sorry.
you can always look me up on my district website, Jacksonville-North Pulaski School District. But if you're on social media, it's Jeremy Strickland Owoh, or you can just type in Owoh on LinkedIn, Facebook, on Instagram. It's Dr. J 06, and then Twitter, it's Dr. J 06 as well.
Dr. J, Jeremy Owoh, Dr. Jeremy Owoh, thank you so much. There's so much more we can learn about you, and we look forward to bringing you back on at some point in the future. But I'm also looking forward to just staying connected to you, man. There's just so much synergy here. And all of you all listening or watching, you already know what it is. Until next time,